Hey guys, welcome back to Reserved Investments on YouTube, and welcome to part 4 of my 4,000 subscriber Q&A series. We're going to get right to the questions because I am going to try to keep this segment under 20 minutes because a lot of people have reached out and said, Sean, I love your Q&A series, but sometimes they're too long. Other people have reached out and said, Sean, you can make them longer. You could go like 2 hours on some of these Q&As. And I always laugh and say, my friends, I wouldn't be able to talk for 2 hours straight on camera. That would be a disaster. So we're going to film this Q&A. There will be a part 5, rest assured, but we're going to get right into the questions because we got a lot of ground to cover. So first question. Hey, Sean, I enjoy listening to your perspective. I wanted to hear your opinion on some examples of investment-grade U.S. currency and coins for someone looking to invest between $500 to $5,000. Okay, the one thing that you did not answer for me is, are you investing between $500 and $5,000 per particular coin and currency that you're going after? Or is this just a one lump sum investment? You want to invest $5,000 in rare coins and rare banknotes, and you want to know my thoughts. Here's how I'm going to answer this. Unlike speculative markets in the collectibles trade, when you invest in established and or sophisticated antique markets, you are better off spending your entire budget on one item rather than diversifying. So if you utilized my consulting services in the antiques and collectibles trade and said, Sean, I have $5,000 to spend. I want to spend it on either a rare coin or a investment grade banknote. What do you recommend? I would tell you to spend the entire $5,000 on a coin like a scarce date Walking Liberty $half in MS64 plus condition, that CAC sticker that sells for $4,500 or $5,000 on the open market. Or on the other side of the equation, I would tell you to go after a $1 educational note in PMG 65 or 66 condition. In that particular grade, you'll probably pay $3,000 to $4,000 or more for that particular note at present time. That's the type of items I would tell you to go after. Now, if you are investing in collectibles, meaning Magic the Gathering, Pokemon, vintage video games, items of a speculative nature, I actually would not tell you to spend the entire $5,000 on one item. I would tell you to diversify and break it up between vintage and modern items. Investing in collectibles is different than investing in antiques and sophisticated markets in the antiques and collectibles trade. These are things that a lot of people do not understand. If you are going to get involved in any of these markets, either for the short term or the long-term time horizon, you must understand how these markets operate. Collectible markets are more linear. I've said this a million times. Antique markets are more cyclical. When you invest in coins and currency, you are automatically investing on the antique side of the equation. In most cases, there are some exceptions. For instance, some of you guys out there, you like investing in post-1950 coins. I am not involved in that segment of the market. When I invest in coins and or currency, I invest in issues released by the United States government from the late 1700s all the way up through the 1930s. Well, it is the year 2021, so literally, even if I'm going after a coin that was minted in the 1930s, we're literally 10 years away from that coin being 100 years old at present time. And the definition, the simplest definition of an antique, is an item that is 100 years of age or older. So I hope that helps. The next thing you go on to ask is, what do you think about investing in $500 or $1,000 banknotes? Full disclosure, I'm assuming you're referring to the small size banknotes that were printed by the U.S. government in the 1930s. If that's the case, yes, I love that particular series because at present time, few people realize this, the largest denominated note that the U.S. government produces at present time is the $100 bill. And that's done on purpose to prevent money laundering. Because if the U.S. government produced $500 or $1,000 bills, it would be easier for criminals or drug dealers or people that are committing money laundering to hide that much amount of money because they would just go after, obviously, $500 denominations or $1,000 denominations. So at present time, the max denominated note that our government produces is the $100 bill. So that makes the $500 and $1,000 bill very popular amongst collectors, myself included. There is a significant premium on these notes in almost any grade. So understand that. So if you're going to go after those particular notes in PMG 64 or 65 condition, you're going to pay thousands of dollars for them at auction. And in some cases, if you wanted to go after like $1,000 banknote graded by PMG in 65 that was minted or produced in the 1930s, you're probably going to pay $10,000 or more just for that banknote alone. So the market is great. A lot of appreciation potential in that market. But if you're going to get in that market, you got to do so now because prices are rising exponentially for a lot of those $500 or $1,000 bills that were produced in the 1930s. And I'm not going to even bring up the values that $500 and $1,000 bills that were produced in the 1800s or the early 1900s are bringing on the secondary market. It's insane. But just know, yes, that is a good and valid investment strategy. Next question. Sean, I will ask 2 questions. Okay, I'll give you 2 answers. Star Wars or Star Trek going forward for better investment and or speculation? In my opinion, obviously Star Wars has the edge at present time. Very few younger collectors are going to gravitate towards investing in vintage Mego Star Trek figures or Playmate Star Trek figures that came out in the 1990s. Obviously, Star Wars has the edge. Now, on a long enough time horizon, I do not like both of these categories. I want to be 100% honest. I do not like investing in factory sealed vintage toys for the simple reason that they break down, even graded by AFA. The tape dries up, the bubble's yellow. It is a bitch to keep that stuff in immaculate condition. You really have to have luck and a good storage system on your side to do so for the long term. So I don't like either of those markets, truth be told. The other question that you go on to ask is Beatles or Elvis going forward. I would give the edge in this case to Beatles. Elvis is still popular, but he is starting to die out. Let's be realistic here. My father, my mother, they listen to Elvis. They're in their early 70s. So that's pretty much the generation that grew up with Elvis. Now, you can argue, well, obviously, the generation that grew up with Beatles is probably in their 60s as well. But still, Beatles still has the edge right now. There's a lot of younger collectors that are gravitating towards vintage rock memorabilia that are going after Beatles merchandise more than Elvis merchandise. But on a long enough time horizon, guess what? I don't like either of those either. Next question. Sean, I just saw a segment on the local news the other day that graded sports cards are making a comeback. Wow, imagine that. Welcome to the channel. I want to give you some other advice. Did you also hear on the news something about a virus that's ravaging the world at present time, known as the coronavirus? Because those 2 things have pretty much been in the news for several years now. Now, I'm not trying to be a smart ass. I apologize the way that I answered that. But yes, modern era sports cards and graded era sports cards are very popular in the collectibles marketplace at present time. My advice, if you are getting involved in that market, be very careful if you are getting in the market for modern era sports cards. The money, in my opinion, and the long-term validity of that market belongs to the vintage cards in that particular market segment. So you want to go after your Mickey Mantles, your Babe Ruths, your Honus Wagners if you can afford them. You do not want to be investing in modern era sports cards that are being produced in the year 2020, 2021 for the long term. In my opinion, that's a recipe for a disaster. Just my opinion. Next question. Sean, I have 2 questions for you. What is it with everybody starting to ask me 2 questions in this Q&A series? This is why these Q&A series take so damn long, and we got to break them in 6 or 7 parts in some cases. I'm just being sarcastic, guys. Again, feel free to ask as many questions as you want. But you go on to ask, Sean, in the past, you talked about having a Lego room. Could you do a room tour? One of the earlier videos that I did on this channel to introduce the topic of Lego and Lego speculation, I did film in that particular room of this particular house. I will do more videos in that particular room as we get deeper into the content that is geared towards investing and speculating in Lego sets. So yes, there will be more videos produced in that room coming. Full disclosure, in this particular house, I actually have several different rooms. I have a video game room. I have a pop culture room. I have a traditional antique room. So this house is actually themed by rooms, believe it or not. It's quite interesting. Now, second full disclosure, this house is eventually going to become a rental. I am not going to remain in Boyertown, Pennsylvania for my entire life. I would like to move closer to the King of Prussia and Philadelphia areas. I've said this before. Maybe some weird twist of fate, I do meet a particular attractive and highly desirable young lady that I fall in love with in the Boyertown area, and I do decide to stay. Honestly, after dating certain women in the Boyertown area, I can tell you that's most likely not going to happen. But if it would happen, I would let you guys know firsthand that, hey, I'm staying in Boyertown and you're not going to be seeing some new scenery in my videos, because if I do move, obviously I'm going to be recording out of a new house, because this house would be used as a rental property then at that particular point. I would not sell this house. I would rent it out. So interesting point of perspective there. You go on to ask, my other question is, can you do a deep video about investing in Lego sets? Yes, those videos are coming. They've been tied up in development hell for a couple of months now. I am working on finalizing them. It just seems every time I finalize a video on Lego and get it ready to completion, something else comes up that I got to do a video on. It knocks that video out of the running. So I do apologize for that. I know a lot of you guys out there reach out to me, Sean, you need to do more videos on Lego or sports cards or vintage vinyl record collecting or the like. I have those videos in the works. It's just something that I can never see to find time to finish. I am trying to get them done, I assure you. Next question. Hey, Sean, how do I find antique and collectible categories that are in a bear market and or undervalued? Okay, in my opinion, if an item, an antique or a collectible, is selling on an established market, meaning you log on the Hakes, Morphe Auctions, Christie's, Sotheby's, eBay, Heritage Auctions, Comic Link, and you see an antique or a collectible selling on that particular auction site, it cannot by in its nature be quote unquote undervalued, because pretty much every collector of comic books knows Heritage Auctions offers signature auctions devoted solely to comic books. Every collector of comic books knows that Comic Link is a premier auction site for comic books. So naturally, you're not going to find an Incredible Hulk 181 9.4 selling on Heritage or Comic Link for $2,000 when the current market rate is over $7,000 plus for that particular item. You see where I'm going with this? So in my opinion, an antique or collectible that is selling on an open, established market that other collectors and investors are well aware of, that particular item cannot be undervalued. We can have an undervalued stock. We can have an undervalued ETF. We can have an undervalued corporate bond, because there are fundamentals we can look at when we talk about traditional asset investing, where we can break apart the debt to asset ratios. We can break apart revenues. We can look at how much debt the company is carrying, and we can analyze whether a particular traditional asset is undervalued. You really can't do that with speculative assets in the antiques and collectibles trade. And spoiler alert, all assets in the antiques and collectibles trade are speculative to a certain point. Some are better than others. Some are more speculative over the long term. Others are more speculative over the short term. But rest assured, whether we're talking about rare coins, Pikachus, Planeswalkers, Pokemon, vintage video games, Mario, Sonics, it's all speculative when you look at it from that standpoint. So where am I going with this? There is a way to research markets in the antiques and collectibles trade. I assure you guys, I will get to showing you how to do that. If you haven't noticed, this channel is building on each of the topics that I presented beforehand. So this channel is designed for someone to tune into this channel and start watching the first video I ever did, and then watch the second video after that, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, and so forth and so on. So a lot of the topics that I talk about build in importance. And that's very important for me to cover on this channel, because I have people not only who are multimillionaires that watch this channel, that are educated in business, economics, and finance, but I also have people that are 17, 18, 22 years of age, just starting out investing, that they don't understand how these markets work. So I have to present the material in that manner. With this question being out of the way, I do have a conference call to go on in regards to my antique and collectible consulting business. So I am going to cut this video short. Rest assured, part 5 will be much longer. I promise you guys. Thanks for watching and have a great day.